I met and have been in a 10-year relationship with my boyfriend, Carl. After the first year of our relationship, I made it very clear that I intended to be a wife someday. By the time I was 28, I started to remind him of my goals and expectation, and Carl told me that while he wanted to marry me, he just wasn't ready yet. And I didn't like how I was pressuring him and called me controlling. Eventually, we broke up, but 6 months later, we got back together and even moved in. Looking back on it now, I realized that wasn't the best decision, but I was just so emotionally attached to this man and felt so invested that I was willing to go back to him. Carl and I have been living together for 4 years, and while I stopped being happy about it after the first 6 months, living with him isn't a bad experience. Plus, I always thought us getting married was just around the corner because he said he was ready to commit to me, but he wanted to wait for the right time because I deserved a perfect proposal and a more stable husband. I've been going to therapy for the past 2 years and recently had an epiphany. Since childhood, I've always wanted a wedding, but never really gave much thought to being a married woman 24/7. And what would that mean? Given my country's shift in politics and new laws that politicians are trying to pass, I realized that not only am I fine with never getting married, but I start to lean more into no longer possessing the desire to. Since then, it feels like I've been set free in a way and started focusing on myself. One of the major things I've done is tell Carl that I'll no longer assist with babysitting his nephews and niece, and instead focus more of my time into getting certified and something to increase my earning potential and just relaxing. Carl seemed nonchalant about it at first, but then he said we needed to have a sit down. When I sent Carl's mom and his brother a text that they had 3 weeks before I stopped helping out completely. Carl said that while he understands my desire for more personal time, it's important to be there and sacrifice for family. I told him that he can switch around his work schedule and help with the kids since they are technically his family. He said that the children love me and that one day they'd be my family too, once we're man and wife. It was in that moment that I told him that I no longer desired marriage, and while I gave my reasons, Carl still took it as wanting to break up with him and or thinking that he would make a terrible husband. That is not the case at all, but he's starting to lash out and get suspicious. I just don't know what to do. How can I get my boyfriend to see that's me and not him? Here's my take on this. Honestly, it just sounds like Carl strung her along for years with the promise of someday, and now that she's finally free from wanting marriage, he feels threatened because the control slipped out of his hands. That's not fair to her. I get that family is important, but let's be real. It's not her responsibility to be the built in babysitter just because she's his girlfriend. Him saying one day they'll be your family too, that's almost manipulative. Like dangling marriage again to keep her locked in. But, and the fact that she told him calmly that she doesn't want marriage anymore, and he took it as you think I'd be a terrible husband, shows he is not listening. He's projecting his own securities. She literally gave her reasons, but instead of respecting them, he's lashing out. To me, that's a red flag because a relationship should be built on mutual understanding and shared vision, not just waiting around for someone to be ready or getting guilt tripped for not sacrificing your own time and goals. She's been in this for 10 years. If he can't respect her shift in desires after all this time, can you really picture building a future with him? Food for thought. Okay, there is an update to the story, and it goes as this. Things got intense pretty quickly. For a while, we were either fighting or not speaking at all. At one point, he even moved into the spare bedroom. He stopped paying me his share of the streaming services, which were all under my accounts, and I even had to mute his mom and brother for a bit just to keep my peace. Then, right before Valentine's Day, he suddenly did a 180. He started talking to me again, apologized for how he had acted, and even seemed open to hearing my side. He told me he had planned a special day for us the weekend after Valentine's, and honestly, I was relieved and excited. On that day, I woke up to breakfast laid out for me with a text saying there was a work emergency, but he'd only be gone for a couple of hours. He told me to meet him at downtown movie theater by 3 p.m. I thought, okay, cool. So I got ready and headed over. At 2:55, I texted asking him where he was, and he replied saying he had mistyped. The movie was actually at 5 p.m., and he couldn't leave work until 3 p.m. No big deal. It had a fat finger typos before. I killed some time by walking around in an outlet nearby. Then I got another text. He had pushed our reservations back to 7 p.m. because he was still stuck at work. That's when my gut told me something was off. Instead of pressing him, I just gave him a thumbs up, sent him a selfie from one of my favorite stores, and decided to drive home. Traffic was light for once, so I got back faster than expected. When I pulled up to the complex, I noticed a moving truck. At first, I thought nothing of it. It's normal for people to move in or out around that time of year. But then I saw some of his friends by the truck. Then I saw him move my couch, the one I paid for, into the truck. I called the police right away and reported that I was being robbed. I stayed in my car, trying to calm down until I saw Carl himself helping a man load my bookshelf into a pickup. That's when I got out and confronted him. Turns out he had spent the whole day trying to keep me away so he can secretly move out and take my furniture with him. And when I say my furniture, I mean it. I was the one who picked everything, bought everything, and had receipts for all of it. When the police showed up, one guy tried to claim the bookshelf was his because Carl had sold it to him. I shut that down quick. I showed my receipts and told them I'd press charges if my belongings weren't returned. The cops at first brushed it off as a civil matter since Carl and I lived together, but the next day I went into the station and spoke with a female officer who actually helped. By then, a lot of my things were gone: dining room set, blender, groceries, lamps, TV, coffee table, mattress, and even my spices. The only thing his friends brought back was the couch, probably because it was a pullout and too much hassle. To make it worse, Carl had also been talking to the landlord's middleman about taking his name off the lease without the proper paperwork or even confirming with me, so I filed a complaint. In the end, I moved out, pressed charges, and made sure there was a legal paper trail. I also filed a civil case against Carl. I got some financial compensation, and now he has until November to pay me back in full. I wasn't even sad about the breakup. It was the way he did it that pissed me off. He wanted to punish me, and I'm just grateful I didn't marry him. Since then, life has been on the up. I finished my certification, landed a promotion and raise, and my dad even gave me the money he had been saving for my wedding to use as a down payment on a house instead. After all this, I can say one thing with certainty: I am 10 toes down on never getting married. Wow, this update is wild. At first I thought Carl was just emotionally immature or not ready for marriage. But nope, this dude went on full shady, trying to secretly move out while stealing her furniture. That's not just messy, that's petty, vindictive, and straight up disrespectful. And the fact that he had his friends hauling out her stuff, the stuff she picked out and paid for, proves everything about this guy's character. That's not a partner. That's someone trying to manipulate and control until the very last second. I actually have so much mad respect for the female here because instead of freaking out or letting it spiral, she called the cops, she documented everything, she filed complaints, and protected herself. And, you know, that strength and presence of mind, most people wouldn't even have in that situation like that because the first thing that people would do is just lash out. And I'm really happy that she turned this whole mess into a win for herself. And then when you look at basically the glow up after, she got the promotion, certification, she got the pay raise, and now she even has a down payment for her own house. She's literally taking the pieces of her life that Carl tried to control and flipping them into independence. And that is really leveling up after the breakup. And I think it's a huge reminder that when someone tries to pull you down, sometimes stepping away is the best power move. Honestly, Carl thought he was punishing her, but he really just exposed himself as someone she's lucky she didn't marry. Can you imagine being legally tied to a person that sneaky and petty? Nah, sometimes the trash really does take itself out. And there is a bigger lesson here, and it's quite huge. And it's don't ignore the red flags. Don't make excuses for someone who disrespects you, and don't be afraid to cut ties when someone shows their true colors. Protect your peace, focus on yourself, and really don't let anyone make you feel guilty for choosing your life over someone else's drama. And I just feel like at the end of this day, this story is a reminder that sometimes heartbreak isn't the loss, it's the wake up call that sets you free. And the female in here is really a prime example of that. You know, when you put yourself first, you can come out stronger, smarter, and happier. And yeah, Carl is an absolute douchebag.